Hi, Professor Swillenberg. Here is my presentation about Baltimore Highlands Elementary School. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I teach at Baltimore Highlands Elementary School. Just some background, it's located in Lansdowne, Maryland. There are 733 students there. It's a very diverse school. The breakdown is about 177 African American students, 177 white students, 283 Hispanic students, 23 Asian students, 19 American Indians, and 54 students who are two or more races. Out of the 283 Hispanic students, we have 133 ELLs. Our school is very transient. We have a lot of kids who come in and out. In my classroom this year, I think I had 2 students who left and 2 students who joined. We kind of had a wave, I want to say in March, of a lot of newcomers who had recently been released from refugee camps come to this school. We had a lot, particularly in 3rd grade, and they had absolutely no English background. So that was definitely a challenge for the 3rd grade this year, getting those students acclimated. But looking at the data, you can see that most of the students who either move to us or withdraw, majority of them are African American. 94% of our school are farms, so that trend holds up in the data of students who move in and out. Most of our students do receive free and reduced lunches. So this was just a little more background about my class. I had 2 who joined us and 2 who left. Obviously, it's difficult to have students join the class mid-year. You know, they don't know any of the students. They're getting to know the curriculum. You're trying to get them caught up. But I found that my students, you know, they might have a background in multiplication and division, but they haven't been taught it in, you know, a similar strategy. And then I'm a whole new teacher with a different teaching style. So I found that it was so much more than just getting them caught up academically. You know, we had a huge emphasis on writing this year in math. And, you know, my new students might be great at computating and solving these simple problems, but they really struggled with the writing portion. And it was difficult to build that sense of community, you know, come March or April when my kids are kind of checked out. We're in the middle of park season, and then we have 2 new students join. It was just a difficult time for them to kind of hop into things. I also said it's difficult when students join your class, you know, a week before you're about to take an assessment and you're scrambling to get them caught up. And, you know, that's their first impression of your classroom is just this stressful test review environment. It's not really an accurate picture of your room. And I said for my 2 students who left, you know, they're so used to our classroom for an entire school year, and then come April, they're leaving and they have to go to this new school and not only get caught up academically themselves, but get used to a new group of kids, a new teaching style, you know, get used to the way they teach math or they do reading. So I just noted that's really difficult for students to go through. And I noticed my new students, you know, it's definitely hard for them to break into the classroom. So some of the labels we have at our school, we don't have any gifted or talented classes, but in the 5th grade, there's an advanced academic class for 5th grade students. So out of the 89 5th graders, there are 24 of them. We tend not to use the term at risk, but we do use Fontes and Pinnell to track reading levels. So we do talk a lot about students who are reading below grade level, but we don't tend to use the term at risk. I also think it's because just such a large majority of our students are below grade level that we don't want to put that label on them just because that would be a majority of our student population would be at risk. Like I said, there were 133 students who are ELLs or bilingual, and there are 47 students who were identified for special education services. The suspension data, there were no expulsions this year, or but there were 6 suspensions. They were all male, no female. One student was African American, 3 were Hispanic, 1 was 2 or more races, and 1 was white. I said that some things we have tried to do this year, we've implemented restorative practices, we've introduced the Virtues Project, we do virtue shout outs, so really calling students out for that positive behavior. Just from my last year, I've seen an improvement in behavior, but I noted it would have been interesting to look at the discipline data from last year to see if we've seen improvements this past year in doing restorative practices. We're really trying to move away from those kind of public consequences like having clip charts posted or move your clip or now you're on red, and trying to have those conversations with students to talk about why they're upset, what they can do when they're feeling that way, what's a smart way we can solve this problem instead of causing an issue, and then also giving students those skills so they can start to solve some issues on their own. This will come later, but we only have 2 male certified teachers in our school. So out of the 34 classroom teachers, 2 are male. And I said that that was a really huge weakness, that there just aren't a ton of male role models for our boys to look up to. And I think this would be really beneficial for them. We also have no teaching staff of color, which I also think is a huge weakness for our school, given that a majority of our students are Hispanic or African American, Asian, 2+ races. We are such a diverse population, and our teaching staff is not reflected that way, unfortunately. The next couple slides show data from math and ELA data on Park who were not proficient. So these were 3rd grade students who took the ELA assessment who were not proficient, and it's pretty glaring that most of our students are not. I don't think this is a completely accurate picture, just speaking grades 3 through 5. When you look at the data to see who's not reading on grade level, it's roughly half the grade is on grade level and half is not. So then when we look at Park data and it says that about 90% of males, 85% of our females are not proficient, that doesn't make sense to me when we say that half of our students are on grade level. So all of these numbers to me should be around 50%. 3rd grade is the first year that they take Park. So, manipulating this online assessment is a challenge. They've never been timed before. Park, you have an hour for math, hour and 15 for reading. They've never really had these time restrictions on an assessment before. It's just a very stressful environment in general. I know I would get stressed out on testing days, making sure that everything, was running smoothly, and our attitude definitely reflects on the students. So I think it's a combination of things that affect their performance on Park. And, I remember trying to implement some of these testing strategies, and my students were just getting so bogged down with all this test prep. And I just thought, why am I, drilling Park down their throat? Because when they get to the actual assessment, they're going to be so sick of it and not want to work hard. So I kind of moved away from this test prep stuff. Didn't really think it was going to be beneficial. So, that could be a factor, but it is alarming. I see probably half of my class. Well, I guess I'll get to that when we get to math. But it's just interesting what teachers use to track progress and growth. And I do not agree that 95% of my males are not on grade level or 85% of my females are not on grade level. So what I'm seeing doesn't match up with what the state is seeing. So obviously I can't speak to what's happening in 4th grade classrooms, but the numbers are pretty similar. 90% of males are not proficient, 83% of females are not proficient. When I looked at the guided reading data, the numbers were about 50-50. So half of the grade was on grade level and half was not. So again, these numbers just don't really add up. You know, if we're saying half of our grade level is on grade, or half of fourth grade is on grade level, but Park is saying, no, a majority of your kids aren't, you know, is that an accurate measure of what they can do? And very similar numbers in fifth grade. One thing that stood out to me was our special ed data. So 88% of special ed students not proficient, 100% of special ed students in the fourth grade were not proficient, and 100% of special ed students in fifth grade not proficient. That stood out to me. A majority of our students are farms, so the farms data and pretty much, you know, the male, female, and the demographic information are very similar. A high percentage of ELLs are also not proficient, given that there are only 133 out of the 733 students that make up our school. So this is the math data. Numbers were slightly better in math. I think math in general is a less intimidating assessment for students to take. There's not as much reading. So my students who are slightly below grade level or even a couple grade levels below can usually figure out what the problem's asking them to do. They can pick a strategy. They've seen all these numbers and images before, so I feel like my students have a little more confidence going into the assessment. Math tends to be more hands-on and engaging, so I definitely throughout the year see higher levels of engagement and motivation in math than reading. There's no scrolling, there's no articles about wolves when none of my students have ever seen a wolf. I've never seen a wolf. ELA just is hard for students to relate to, whereas math, it's, you know, kind of this puzzle that they can figure out. Again, the farms data, most students are free and reduced lunch, so that matches up. High percentage of ELLs not proficient, and special ed data, 100% of fourth grade special ed students not proficient, 100% of fifth grade students not proficient. Third grade tended to have a little more proficiency, but those are two subgroups that I found some inconsistencies with throughout this whole project, this special ed and ELL population. So we're an elementary school. We serve students pre-K through 5, so I can't speak to the graduation rates in the high school, SAT prep classes, advanced placement classes, etc. But as far as I know, all of our fifth graders do transition to middle school. As I said, 94% of our students are free and reduced lunch, 47 special ed students, and 70% of our students who are special ed are also free and reduced lunch. So I spoke to this before, because most of our students are free and reduced lunch, you do see a high percentage of students that are farms are also in our other subgroups. You know, all the demographics are represented in the farms data and the special ed data and ELL. I mentioned this before, we only have that fifth grade math class who's advanced academics, but 62% of students in that class were free and reduced lunch. Yeah, that's the only area that we have of gifted and talented. So again, we try not to use the term at risk, but looking at the Fontes and Pinnell data, this were the grade breakdowns of students who were below grade level and farms, so very high percentages. Most of our students who are below grade level are free and reduced lunch, and just, you know, thinking about my class in my head right now, the students who are above grade level or on grade level,